G'day, welcome back to the shed, welcome back to Flat Tank Friday. Here's the Douglas, and we've got no joy. It's still in the shed, hasn't been to the engine whisperer yet. He's got 4 or 5 bikes in the queue in front of me, including a Grand Prix Triumph engine from the late 40s out of a Grand Prix bike, so that's pretty cool, and I had a look at that last week. But we don't take photos of the engine whisperers, because what he does is his own business, and that's all cool. So the Douglas is still ready to go around there, and I'm patiently waiting. But it's come to the bike lift, and you'll see I've brought my V-twin special up from the storage shed. I'm doing a little bit of work on that and trying to get myself re-excited. It's a 994 or 1000cc MAG engine, MAG, and that's a Swiss engine from, I think, probably the late teens, possibly early 20s. It's in a big old Beazer frame, and that's fine, and Beazer front end. I've got a relatively modern Royal Enfield, I suppose, one of those Indian import front wheels in it, because I wanted some brakes, and having some brakes was really important. I've fitted a set of drop-down bars that I bought at a swap meet, and a guy had made them, and that's sort of how I want to see it. And then there's lots of other custom little bits and pieces. Let's move down to what I've been doing though, and we'll talk about the MAG or the Beazer or whatever we want to call it as we go. So this is what I've been doing with the special. That's a Triumph wheel. Maybe it's mid to late 20s, right side brake drum, left side sprocket, and that's the way these mid to late 20s Beazers were. I've adapted a brake plate that I had that had shoes. I made a longer arm that runs to the original mounting point on the frame. I just cut that out and welded it on, and that was easy. I've also made all the spacers, remade an axle, made a spacer washer, I suppose, to hold the axle in the dropout, because the dropout's the better part of 3/4 and the axle's a half, so I've fashioned this piece up. Made the nuts, made the washers, made all the spacers, and got the wheel centered up in the frame. I'm actually really happy with it. I've had the wheel for 18 months and hadn't done a lot with it because I was a bit chicken. Wheel sits in the frame really well, runs down the centre. I've had a string line on it, and I'm pretty happy with it. I have got a late 20s Beazer 3-speed gearbox that I'm getting rebuilt, and I'm hoping to put that back in and hoping to get everything to line up. I will custom make some sprockets or get some custom bosses on them to get it to fit. Let's go and have a look at what I've been up to. It's been cold and wet here, so I've been having a go at the tanks. They're copper. I didn't have a Beazer tank, and I suppose I didn't want one, so I made copper tanks. I bought copper pipe from a plumbing store. I bought the end caps, and then I bought a filler neck from the States and a brass cap. I made the bung for the fuel tap, and then I'll confess I got a friend who's a light engineer to silver solder it all together, because it required more heat than I could generate, and even he had trouble because the copper would just lose the heat too quickly, and he had to heat sink it on a brick and keep it hot, and it was a bit of a problem. So I made the custom mounts. They're made out of fuel resistant nylon. Oddly, I made them out of wood first. They are bolted to the original tank mounts frames, and the leather strapping goes underneath and holds the tank in place. I do need to line this with something that'll just grab the tank, because the tank will turn if you force it hard enough, and I don't want that. I might even just silver solder a blob onto the bottom of the tank that sits into a recess, and that'd work. I love the leather straps, and they were just bought from a local discount store, and they're leather, and I reckon they came up really well. I did spend a lot of time getting them on, getting them straight, getting the buckles in the same place, cutting them to the same length, and making them look that. Alright, come down and have a look at the one I've been polishing, and I'm getting ready to have a go at nickel plating at home. is my effort. The tank's come up pretty well. Sadly, with copper pipe from the plumbing store, they stamp very finely across the tubing with the brand name. That takes some sanding out. I wish they wouldn't do that, but I don't suppose they intend you to make a fuel tank out of it. I've got about 4 hours in it, and I sanded it with 240, 400, 600, 800, wet and dry, and then I took to it with the steel wool. I don't think I can do a much better job than that myself, and then I'm going to have a go at nickel plating or electroplating at home. It's very expensive to get done. I haven't got over the last visit to the nickel platers, and I've wanted to have a go for a long time. You can buy kits, so that's what I'm going to do. You can see a close-up here of the filler cap. They're vented. They screw in really well. Tank looks good. Come up really well. Underneath is the fitting that takes the fuel tap, and I've got them put away because I broke one. Had to buy a second one. I'm hoping that the tank is smooth enough to accept the nickel, and that I've got enough imperfections out of it that it looks alright. Today, as I've wiped it clean and it's just sitting without any tarnish on it or any residue on it, I'm keen to keep it copper, but it won't stay looking like that because it'll deteriorate. I'm pretty happy with the effort. It's come out pretty well. I'll bring you along for the ride as I attempt nickel plating. Well, I reckon that's my efforts for Flat Tank Friday for another week. Not a lot going on except the sanding of the tank, and that's taken a lot of effort. I did spend a couple of days doing the rear wheel on my special, and I feel good about that. But it's something that this takes a lot of time and a lot of measuring and relatively boring. So you're likely to see the finished results rather than the work as it goes. It's all going together relatively well, and as I spin around for another look at the Douglas, well, it'll get going eventually. I'll get it round to the engine whisperer and I'll be pretty pleased, and I'm sure there'll be some things that need resolved and things that need fixed, but we'll get there in the end. I hope to ride it soon. Hope you have a great weekend. Cheers.